Even if the Cowboys fire Mike McCarthy, Dan Quinn's going to Seattle. Who gave Dan Quinn his first coordinator job? It was Pete Carroll. Where was his first coordinator job? It was with Pete Carroll in Seattle. He helped build that Legion of Boom. That defense, that unbelievable defense that we saw where everybody's trying to compare and contrast the Baltimore Ravens and the Bears and all those defenses that we have seen over the years, the Giants, trying to compare that Seattle defense to all of those. And at one point in that time, for that 4-year, 5-year span, that was the best defense by far in football. And Pete Carroll brought a different type of villain over there in Seattle. He brought the 12th man. Nobody even knew what the 12th man was. For years, they stunk. And we all know what happened to Seattle Seahawks when they had a pretty good running game, and every 5 years they have a new quarterback that you never heard of. They're there for a couple of years, and then they're completely gone. You get lost in Seattle. Pete brought a different thought of winning to Seattle. It didn't work when he was a head coach for a little while with the Patriots. It didn't work when he was a partial 1-year head coach for the New York Jets. It didn't work in the NFL in the beginning. And then he went to USC, and he built one of the biggest dynasties in college football history with the USC Trojans. Pete is 72 years old. You look at him, he's the oldest coach right now in the NFL if he goes into another season. Now that he is stepping down, it would be Bill Belichick. To be consistent for 14 years in a game that goes by you just with a blink of an eye. Look at the running backs. The average running back in the NFL plays 3 years. Mm-hmm. Pete Carroll was there for 14 years. And only one Super Bowl. Should have won 2 if it wasn't for his stupidity at the 3-yard line. All he had to do was hand the ball off to Marshawn Lynch. It would have been over. And he knows it. Everybody knows it. What he was thinking made absolutely no sense. Pete Carroll was a guy that really brought that defensive mind and style to that Seattle Seahawks. And by the way, Pete Carroll's a defensive coordinator. He came from the Bill Belichick tree. Yep. That's where he came from. And not many of them were successful after leaving Bill Belichick. You can go up and down that tree. It's just horrible, putrid. But I will tell you this, Pete Carroll is one of very few that was successful and won a Super Bowl from that tree. And that says a lot about who he was. And he didn't know what his identity was as a defensive coordinator when he was the defensive coordinator for the Patriots, and he jumped from one team to the other as a head coach. And then he realized that maybe going into college football and recruiting players and talking in people's living rooms was more for him. It was more where he could be connected to the younger players and connected to the youth that are future NFL superstars. And he did. He recruited Matt Leinart, and he wasn't a successful quarterback in the NFL, but he won 2 national championships and a Heisman. Okay, Matt Leinart won a Heisman, right?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
I think he won 1. I'm pretty sure he won 1. And then you look at, obviously, other players that came from his team. And look at Wagner. Wagner was a part of that success. He was. And Wagner was drafted by Pete Carroll. If you go up and down that roster, Richard Sherman, all those guys came from Pete Carroll. Thomas, Pete Carroll. Now, he didn't draft those guys, but he had to develop them. You could draft those guys all you want. Who's the one that's developing them? The coach. And everything about Pete Carroll shows you the type of man that he is. He never threw anybody under the bus. All those stories that were coming out from the locker room where Russell Wilson didn't come out from the locker room after Russell Wilson was gone. That tells you about who he is as a coach and what type of coach he is, keeping everything in the locker room.